Well, we met at Oxford. We went into careers in finance. I worked in investment banking. Konrad was on the trading floor.
Right.
That's how the story. I mean, it was based on our experiences originally.
But we all have had interesting, crazy experiences.
True.
Matt's going to have
But not
eventually
like
a
they
streaming
do on the
series
trading
his
floor,
life.
right? I mean, the trading floor is on another level. There's a story today about an ICAP broker who had a client from Citi who just continued to harass her. And she went to HR and said, this is a problem. The guy's making me feel uncomfortable. And her boss was like, I don't care. He brings us so many trades. Suck it up, basically. That's not unusual, is it?
No, it feels very realistic. I mean, some people say to us a criticism of the show, they think it's hyper sensationalized. But like we experienced, I worked on a trading floor for 3 years at a big American bank. This was pre-Me Too, but it still felt like very much a hierarchical place where women were having to behave in a certain way, and in a way men weren't expected to be honest.
Well, but go back to how it happened. I mean, because it's like I said, we all have great ideas. Like, how did you make it happen?
Well, we were working with a producer called Jane Tranter, who was a big cheese at the BBC before setting up her own studio, and we were doing something totally different for her. And then she basically discovered that we were two ex-bankers, and she said, "Did you ever want to write about this world?" And we had written about it. We'd written a really bad script about it, basically based on our own experiences, and it was incredibly boring and formless. But it was a script about finance, and
Right.
the way that we opened it up is obviously there's loads of depictions of finance that we all know and love, but they're always from the top down. They're always about the people who have the most power in the industry. So our way of going through it was the new lens was to go through the people who had the least amount of power, people going to the job for the first time, which was reflective of our experience.
And they're still partying like constantly, right? I mean, is it the same, you think, post Me Too in this new era as it was back in the days of heaven and hell parties and the Predator's ball?
I think, I mean, look, these places have to evolve. They have to evolve with the times. They have to keep up with the times. HR departments are incredibly much stronger now than they were 10 years ago. But I think, human behavior, I mean, some people say this show is quite a cynical take on the world, but me and Mickey have a quite cynical take on the business. So I think it's a pretty realistic depiction of how things still unfold.
How do you kind of keep the story going, or how do you think about what drives it?
We have very good writers. I mean, we have insanely good writers' room. Like me and Mickey are sort of standing on the shoulders of really strong collaborators. So we go into a room for 12 weeks. We break the episodes with writers. We go away and write them. And it's a contemporary show. We loved it. Ironically, given we were both spat out by the business, we find finance fascinating now that we're writing about it rather than doing it. If that makes sense.
We've got great consultants as well. One of which is quite a well-known person who doesn't want to be named.
Yeah, that's not out there.
And he absolutely loves using our show as to basically bash people he used to work with.
Well, listen, Billions, right? You think about Billions, right? They had some really incredible consultants too, right? To make sure that the hedge fund world, right, that investment world was depicted pretty accurately. And for all of us, it was like a guessing game of like, who was it based on?
That wasn't a guessing game at all.
It's quite
We all know who it was based on.
I know, but you know that there were nuances that you maybe wanted to still figure out.
Do you get any commentary from the pros? Like if you're hanging out at a pub in the city, does someone say, "Oh, that show's actually very realistic," or "No, that's way off. That's not how we like
We
sell
get
bonds."
accosted by people in the pub all the time.
And
all the time.
they often show their own narcissism as well, because they come up and say, "Oh, that character's quite clearly me."
Yeah.
So we don't
I don't know who you are, dude. But yeah, no. People in the business say it's quite accurate. We get approached quite a lot.
I still get a lot of LinkedIn messages saying you got me into finance via your show.
Seriously?
Yeah, which is quite.
We didn't actually write it as a recruitment tool, but ironically, it's become
That,
recruitment.
I think, is very interesting because you have a cynical take on the industry. It's very dramatic in a way that maybe people don't necessarily want to be involved with, and yet you're recruiting people to the industry. Do you find that more often than you're making people leave the industry?
I think it's obviously we left it, but there's a certain amount of seduction in the show, and it makes the industry look sexy. Someone said to me the other day, "You've made banking sexy again," and I said, "Well, that's exactly what I set out to do." So I'm very happy.